Alrighty, folks, live from the studio, I'm Jimmy Selesky, and have you heard the news? The polls are in, courtesy of the New York Times. Presidential polls, opinion polls, in regards to the Trump versus Biden election this year that is fastly approaching. And the numbers are not looking so good for old Dark Brandon there, but they are looking pretty groovy for Mr. Trump. So we're going to take a look at those numbers today. These are swing state polls, battleground state polls, in which Trump is leading every one of them. Some by small margins, some by impressively large margins. Margins that you're not even generally used to seeing in, purple states. So obviously I want to talk about that and just kind of, give everybody, arm you with facts about the most recent polls. But also, I want to talk about why. I also want to arm you with opinions. I want to arm you with my opinions about why we're seeing this happen. But first, obviously, let's look at these numbers. What are we talking about here? Before we look at the numbers right now, let's look at the numbers from 2020, because again, all of these polls from this New York Times thing are swing states. So let's take a look at how these swing states performed for Trump and Biden in the 2020 election. So this is your electoral map. You can see blue is Biden, red is Trump. Shouldn't have to say that. And let's take a look at these swing states. So swing states, we got Pennsylvania, Biden, Michigan. That's both of the, that's Michigan, right? This thing and that thing. Biden, Wisconsin, Biden, Georgia, Biden, Arizona, Biden, Nevada, Biden. Just for the record, I didn't mix up Nevada and Arizona with my mouse pointer. That was a slip of the mouse. I know where Vegas is, and I know where Tucson is. So what do you notice about all those states I just listed? All those states I listed apparently were won by Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Now, mind you, states like Georgia and Pennsylvania, Arizona, a lot of these states were won by incredibly thin margins. Wisconsin, probably more. That's just off the top of my head. Incredibly small margins. Conveniently small margins. But we're not going to get into that right now. We kind of got into that a little bit yesterday. And we'll definitely be getting into it in the future. But for now, Biden won those states in 2020. All of those states I just listed. Go blue. Let's take a look at how Americans are feeling now. So, here are the New York Times polls. We will start with Wisconsin at the top. Now, I'm going to be honest. These all say the same thing and then have different... I don't know what this means. I'm not a fucking pollster. There's 4 polls, all from New York Times, Siena, for each state. Somebody probably could explain to us what that means, but for the time being, I'm just going to look at the highest number because I'm a homer. Wisconsin, Trump is up 1%. Then you go to Pennsylvania, Trump is up 4%. Nevada, showing anywhere between 12 and 14, so call it 13. Trump is up 13. In Nevada. That's huge, dude. Michigan. Couple showing Biden, but Trump is up 7-1. See, it would be really helpful if I understood what these different polls mean. Georgia, Trump is up as high as 10. And Arizona, he's up as high as 9. So we're talking a couple double-digit point leads here. Double-digit point leads in a few states, and the high single digits, 8-9% in the majority of the others. There's a couple states like The worst Trump is performing is like 1 or 2% in certain swing states. But that's what you're noticing, is that every single one of these states that went for Biden in 2020 has now apparently flipped whole hog for Trump as of now, less than 6 months before election 2024. And here's the other thing to consider too. And this is something even Fareed Zakaria, who is a known liberal, he was on CNN. He's no Trump supporter at all. This is something that even he brought up, which Republicans, Trump supporters, conservatives have been bringing up in regards to these polls for years at this point. You know, when Trump was looking like he was losing to Hillary in the polls in 2016, and then all the polls in 2020, and even polls earlier in this election cycle where Biden was performing a little bit better than he is now. Conservatives, particularly Trump supporters, have always stated the reality, which is that, you know, this kind of idea of the silent majority, that, you know, being a Trump supporter in America, whether you like it or not, if you live in like anywhere close to like a major metropolitan area, like a major city or the major suburbs of that major city where it is super liberal, basically anywhere where you're liable to see a hate has no home here, or one of those stupid signs. It's like, in this house, we believe that water is wet and black people are cool. Like whatever those signs are. Like, if you're a Trump supporter in one of those areas, you kind of have to like keep it quiet. I heard somebody saying that being a Trump supporter in like a major American city is kind of like being gay in the 40s or 50s. Like, you don't just walk around like, hey girls, what's up? You have to kind of like, you know, dress normal. If you see a guy, you got to kind of like have your little gay signals. Like you don't just come out and say like, I'm gay, I fuck dudes. You got to like make eye contact with him, catch him in the bath. I don't know how being gay in the 40s worked. I don't even know how being gay in the 2020s right now works. But, you know what I'm saying. When I meet a guy out and you talk about something, current events or something like that, you really have to test the waters. If you're someone like me, some people don't give a shit. Some people walk around with a Trump hat. They don't give a shit. I'm not one of those guys. I try not to be political unless there's a point, you know. I'm only political when it's appropriate. And in those instances, like I was talking to some guy in the sauna, speaking of not being gay, and you know, the topic of I brought up the sauna hat. And of course, I had heard about the sauna hat. You put it over your head. It keeps you from overheating because your head is like the first thing to heat up. So they invent this sauna hat, which keeps your head cooler so you can stay in the sauna later. And Tucker Carlson was talking about that on Rogan. And so I was in the sauna, not having a gay conversation with another man. And I said, the sauna's extra hot today. And I was like, I wish I had one of them sauna hats. He was like, oh yeah, I just heard about those too. I'm like, oh really? And now we're just two 40s gay guys. Like, oh really? Where'd you hear about the sauna hat? He's like, oh, I think I was listening to some podcast the other night where somebody was talking. I'm like, oh yeah, you were listening to some podcast? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was it? And of course I knew the answer, but I'm sitting there acting like I kind of forgot too. I'm like, oh, I think it was the Tucker Carlson one on Rogan. I think it was Tucker Carlson, right? Meanwhile, I'm acting like I'm acting like my brother didn't say Tucker Carlson on Rogan though, and I immediately popped that shit on as soon as he went home. Like, of course I knew it was from the Tucker Carlson Rogan experience, but those are two people that you normally don't admit to, like, listening to, especially Tucker Carlson, but even Rogan, for some reason, you know, people think they can tell a lot about you if you talk about Rogan in public, and they kind of can. It does say a lot about you, not what they think it says about you. It just says you're a normal fucking dude. But to some people, it means you are a white supremacist, transphobic vaccine denier or whatever. So that's them. But you always got to watch out for that, especially, in these type of areas. And so I bring it up and he's like, yeah, that was it. Yeah, I was just watching that. And then this slow progress of us kind of just tipping our toe in the water. Like, all right, what can I say next? Like, okay, so we've already both admitted we listened to the Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan podcast. And then Elon Musk comes up, Twitter. Next thing you know, we're talking about censorship. And at every step of the way, it's like, all right, It really is like that. It's not like liberals, dude. It's not. This is what I call liberal privilege. Liberal privilege is assuming that everyone agrees with you all the time. And if by some odd chance you don't agree with me, you are a piece of shit. To contrast the story I just told you of me and some dude in the sauna slowly over the course of 15 minutes tiptoeing our way into a conversation just about admitting that we listened to fucking Rogan and Tucker Carlson. Took us 15 minutes to get there. We didn't talk about, Trump and shit. That's going to be like 6 more weeks of running into each other at the gym before we get to that. I promise. Meanwhile, just yesterday, I'm at the gym, and this other dude about my age is talking to some dude right at the bench next to me. He's like, yeah, anybody who thinks the election was stolen is just a fucking idiot. Like, those people are fucking nuts. Like, dude, Elon Musk, I heard he's a fucking jerk. Trump's a fucking lunatic, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting there listening to him. I wanted so bad to be like, dude, you've been sitting on that fucking bench talking. I've been waiting on this bench, and now you're going to start fucking saying this shit. Fucking do a set and move it, buddy. But this guy doesn't give a shit. He's saying all this within earshot. Why? Because liberal privilege. You can say whatever the fuck you want. You just assume that everyone that's around you is right in alignment with your political beliefs. I couldn't imagine standing in the middle of a gym in Towson, Maryland, the suburbs of Baltimore, liberal as fuck, and just standing there by the bench talking to some dude and be like, dude, January 6th was a fucking hoax. Totally fucking blown out of proportion. They absolutely did some shady shit with that election. Like, but I couldn't imagine. And everybody around me is just like, oh my God. Oh my God, should I call the Capitol Police? This seems dangerous. Does he even believe black people are cool and water is life? I'm starting to wonder. But that's liberal privilege. So, can I say the word privilege, please? Even then, privilege. Okay, that is liberal privilege. And that bleeds into everything. It bleeds into when people are being polled. Because sometimes certain people in certain areas are a little bit more shy to say that they are a Trump supporter. So that in some way slightly kind of dampens Trump's turnout and results in polls, particular. Not in voting, because at the end of the day, they're going to go out and vote. But in the polls, people in general are less comfortable to talk about their support for Trump than they are to talk about their support for Biden. Because the same way that I'm in the sauna with the guy, trying to figure out a way to admit I listen to Joe Rogan, contrasted to the guy in the main floor of the gym yelling about how stupid the election fraud people are. Every person who hates Trump has no problem telling you they hate Trump. Not every person who likes Trump is going to admit that. And even with all that being said, these are the numbers we're looking at. So this, by all accounts, is a low estimate of how badly Trump is smacking Biden in terms of public opinion. And you want to talk about the why? Because I do. Let's talk about why. Why? Because the Democrats have ruined their brand. Their brand sucks. You got Trump held a rally in Wildwood, New Jersey. Shouts out Wildwood, New Jersey, by the way. That my family always used to go there for vacations and shit. Shouts out. It's like the boardwalk of all boardwalks. It's like the most classic kind of like Jersey beach town, whatever. And the rally is like, it's like Motley Crue in 1987. It's like, this guy is a fucking rock star. Meanwhile, I'm looking at an article from, this is from New York Magazine, and they're talking about potentially making the Democratic National Convention that's supposed to be in Chicago this year, they're talking about potentially making that virtual and just having like Joe Biden make a couple televised speeches, a couple people have some pre-recorded testimonials or whatever, like just the most boring, like sub-Oscars, sub-Tony, sub-Emmys, like the worst possible just embarrassing Zoom meeting of a convention they're considering having to avoid the Palestine protests that are obviously going to be targeting this convention. That's the difference. You got Trump and Trump supporters partying in fucking Wildwood on the ocean, on the boardwalk, having a great time, packing the place out like, it's Guns N' Roses. And then you got Biden, who can't even, the party can't even hold a freaking convention for the nomination because they're going to have a bunch of losers in keffiyehs show up and protest outside the building. So they're going to have it as a Zoom meeting instead, potentially. That's what I'm looking at in this. This is from the New York Magazine, Intelligencer, whatever. The recent wave of pro-Palestinian protests, I said pro way too many times there, on college campuses has conjured up many nostalgic images of anti-Vietnam War activism, some as Columbia University, self-consciously promoted by protesters whose parents weren't yet born when those anti-war rallies convulsed the country. Such protests, of course, are extremely unwelcome to the Democratic politicians planning the August convention. Aside from disturbing the desired harmony of the quadrennial gathering, this guy could not wait to use the word quadrennial. It means every 4 years. You don't need to say it, dude. We get it. You know words. Which will be counted upon by Team Biden to generate a crucial burst of momentum heading toward November. Signs of disorder will play into Republican law and order rhetoric, just as they did in 1968. One stratagem convention planners reportedly may use is to reduce the number of targets for demonstrators by holding certain key events virtually, as Democrats did in 2020. Politico reports. Trumpeting the success of their COVID-era convention 4 years ago, some in Biden's orbit are aggressively pushing to make the 2024 conclave a hybrid production. That would mean in-person speeches from the president, party luminaries, and rising stars to draw television attention alongside a mix of pre-recorded testimonials and videos from other parts of the country. Well, doesn't that sound awesome? Please do let me know what channel that's going to be on, because I cannot wait. I'm getting my popcorn is already in the microwave for this amazing event. So the most electric of all Democrats, Joe Biden himself, electric the same way Frankenstein is electric, is going to be there in person making a riveting, inspirational speech. And then you're going to have a bunch of other known celebrities, Ariana Grande's, and like, yeah, fucking, if you're homophobic, no, thank you. And then you're going to have, whoever else, AOC, call in as a Zoom call. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. So anyway, I don't really honestly like Joe Biden that much, but he isn't Trump. Remember that. And that's going to be the plan. Also, they can avoid a bunch of college kids in black and white scarves outside of the building, all protesting for Palestine. That's how divided their own base is. Let me play you this video. This is something I heard about, and this is for the first time I'm actually seeing the video, and it is awesome. So this is, I forgot what campus this was. Some protest somewhere. I want to say Texas. I don't know why. Or actually, hold up. Is this Alabama? I don't know. I see like a little signpost flag that says something tied. So maybe it doesn't matter. The point is, it's the pro-Palestine protests that are going on all the campuses and everywhere. And then there's a bunch of counter protesters that are like Trump supporters, pro-America people, whatever. And that's the other thing I might say is most of the counter protests to the pro-Palestine protests are not pro-Israel protests. They're just pro-America protests. Like you would think that the majority of backlash coming against these Palestinian college protests would be pro-Israel. It's not. There are obviously some quote unquote Zionist Israeli pro-Israel protests, but most of the people that are showing up to counter protest these demonstrations and just in general are annoyed by them are just pro-America people, because the kind of unspoken and widely known elephant in the room as it pertains to these protests is that they're just really just anti-West, anti-America. And the same way that the George Floyd protests were anti-West, anti-America, the same way that virtually all of these political movements, whatever the current topic of the day that can be co-opted, is always going to be the face of the event. So right now it's Palestine and the Israeli apartheid state and the genocide and whatever. But in reality, it's the same people that were at the George Floyd things, and it's the same people that were at every demonstration before that, coming from that side of the aisle, and it's the same people that are going to be at every demonstration going forward, regardless of what it's about. So this is not Palestine versus Israel protests. This is pro-Palestine, anti-America kind of sentiments from that side, and then primarily pro-America, typically Trump supporting people on the other side. And they found one thing in common. And you know what that one thing in common they found at this particular protest? Take a listen. So for those of you listening to the audio, we'll watch it again. You have the Trump America side counter protesters chanting "fuck Joe Biden," and then you have the people on the other side in the kafayas and the pro-Palestine stuff also screaming "fuck Joe Biden." And so in this beautiful, amazing moment of unity, truly, I'm not even being facetious, the Trump supporting conservative pro-America, pro-West, whatever movement, and the anti-West, anti-Zionist, pro-Palestine, whatever movement, both agreed, fuck Joe Biden. And so that's the ultra-progressive wing of the Democratic Party, the radical side, the ultra-left. These are the people that they're all wearing masks at the protests. Again, they have their kafayas on. Somehow, because again, it never just has to do with the one thing. Everything gets lumped together. So you see a bunch of rainbow flags there. Every single conversation is like, well, this affects people of this, particularly black and brown people, and especially black and brown women of color. Like everything always gets lumped into everything. That's why even their acronyms are long. That's why typically, I said this before, I'll say it again for the new viewers. Typically, an acronym is there so that you can take something that's normally a lot to say and make it shorter by just saying the first letters. So it would be like, United States of America, or you could say USA. That's an acronym. Well, the LGBT community decided that they were going to make their acronyms even longer than the thing they were describing. So you don't just say gay and trans anymore. You say LGBT. And then you also have to add in words after that, LGBTQIAA plus. And they still wanted to keep going. They just put a plus there to let you know they could if they wanted to, but they're not going to do that to you. But still, their acronym is like 12 syllables. So you see all that in the protest, but the radical left, ultra progressive wing, not even ultra progressive, just the moderately progressive wing of the Democratic Party or base, also hates Joe Biden. So you have half the country that sides on the right side of the aisle, or moderate to right, that would sympathize with Trump or someone else other than Joe Biden, who either just flat out doesn't give a shit about the Israel-Palestine thing, or if you ask them, they'd probably say, I'm definitely not like supporting Hamas, but like I also don't want Israel to be like starting a world war. If we could avoid that, like I don't see why we need to send them all kinds of shit. Like that's the average. Like the average like Trump supporter doesn't really give a shit about all that. They're just annoyed by the protests, and they don't like how Biden's handling the situation. And then you have the left who thinks that Biden's too light on Israel and too supportive of Israel, and so they don't like Joe Biden. So you have Joe Biden in this weird place where nobody really likes him. And I said about the 2020 election forever, the obvious, which is that election was not Trump versus Biden. That election was Trump versus not Trump. That's what it was. Virtually every single vote that was cast for Biden in 2020 was a not Trump vote. Okay, so Biden himself just happens to be the current guy occupying the position of not Trump. All right, to try and sit here and pretend, I mean, when you talk about the 81 million votes or whatever he received in 2020, supposedly the most votes that have ever been received by any presidential candidate ever. Also, remember, Donald Trump also received more votes than any other presidential candidate ever. That same election, 2020, both of them had more votes for president than any other president that's ever run for president, including Barack Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton, you name it. You name it. So, you have the strange reality that we still treat Trump supporters as this fringe minority of extremists group. It's like, oh, really? They're a fringe minority, but Trump got more votes for president than anyone else in history, except for apparently Joe Biden that same year. And then you look at Joe Biden and you're like, this guy is the most popular president in American history? Again, you go to the Wildwood rally over the weekend, or you look at videos of it, and it's insanity. That's what I would imagine it looks like when you're the most popular president in American history, when you've received more votes than any other presidential candidate. When I look at Joe Biden and his supporters, I don't even know if I know a single person that avidly is a Joe Biden supporter. I know a lot of people that avidly hate Trump or don't like him. I know a ton of people that don't like Trump. I don't think I've ever met a person that can sit there with a straight face and be like, I legitimately think Joe Biden is the best possible thing for this country right now. I think he's doing a phenomenal job. I think he has an incredibly exciting and optimistic view for the future of this country, and I think he's nailing it. I think Kamala Harris is an absolute gem. You know, does that exist? But this is the weird word. This is the just the clown world of it all. That's what's right in front of your faces. What's right in front of your faces is Trump has an incredible amount of support. And Joe Biden, you don't know a Biden supporter. Like I said, all you know are Trump supporters and non-Trump supporters. That's all you know. You don't fucking know a Biden supporter. But he's the most popular presidential candidate in history. Whatever. The point is, now he's not. Because again, they've ruined their brand. What do I mean by that? Another example, if you'll please. This is something you may have heard about. This was a big talking point like a month ago, I feel like. And this was a kind of a survey. I forgot who ran it. Gallup polls, maybe. I'm on Gallup.com, so that would make sense. This question, it says, Americans' unprompted views of nation's top problems. So unprompted meaning that, sometimes there'll just be a survey and it'll say like this issue and it'll say like highly concerning, moderately concerned, not concerned at all. But it like tells you the issue and then you rate how much you care about it. That's in this too. But what's more interesting is it just says write down your top issue that you care about. And the number one most popular issue that people cared about as of March 1st through 20th, 2024, so 2 months ago basically, was immigration. 28% of people, when completely unprompted, wrote immigration. More than 1 in 4 people considered immigration to be their top pressing issue in America at the moment. In second place, at 19%, the government as a whole / poor leadership. That's not a good look. So the leadership at the moment is the Biden administration. That's who's leading the government. And 19% of people think that the government right now and poor leadership in general is the biggest issue in our country at the moment. In third place, you have the economy at 14%. 14% of people said the economy. 11% said high cost of living / inflation. And then in fifth place, we'll do the top 5 there, poverty / hunger / homelessness. So that's the top 5. And then you look at the other ones that you would think, like crime is like 3%, racism's 3%. Here's abortion. Sorry, that was terrible. Abortion is sitting at 3%. 3% of people listed abortion. 2% of people listed healthcare. 2% of people listed war in the Middle East. And 2% of people listed climate change or the environment. So what does that tell you? What do those issues have in common? Well, immigration, poor leadership at the moment, the economy, and inflation, the top 4 issues in the country that make up, 47, 61, 72%. 72% of the country comprises these 4 issues. Immigration, bad leadership in government, economy, and inflation. Those are all Trump issues. Obviously, immigration is a Trump thing. That's something that the right is constantly talking about. That's something that the left is constantly ignoring. Obviously, the Biden administration being shitty, aka poor leadership in the government at the moment, is a Trump thing that doesn't help Biden. The economy. Talk about the economy has always been a right-wing issue. If you don't believe me, look at COVID. Everyone you knew that was on the left was talking about, the health aspects of it. You got to wear your mask. You got to get a vaccine. You got to do this. And everyone on the right was saying, open up the goddamn economy so we can get people back to work because this country is going to shit. So the economy, caring about the economy is a Trump thing. And then, of course, inflation, which is another thing that, is something that the Trump side of the aisle is constantly discussing. The conservatives are constantly discussing. And Biden is constantly saying that actually it's doing great. Actually, inflation is going down, which is just completely not accurate in any way. So you have Biden telling you that this issue doesn't exist because he's so good. Meanwhile, everyone you know is broke and can't afford anything. Everyone you know has a lower standard of living with the same amount of money they made 5-6 years ago. But inflation is solved. We're solving inflation. We're looking great. And it's obviously not true no matter what numbers you put in front of our faces. It's obviously not true. So the top 4 issues in the country are all issues that that Trump speaks to, that the conservatives speak to. And then you look at the bottom issues in the country, abortion, Israel, Palestine, racism, healthcare. Healthcare is a thing for sure. That's definitely something that needs to be addressed by either party. I would agree with that. But, numbers don't lie. Only 2% of people seem to find healthcare as the number one issue in the country at the moment. And I would agree. I don't consider it the number one. So that's the one thing about this poll that I will say is that just because something is so low on this poll doesn't mean that nobody cares about it. It just means nobody considers it the most important thing. But that's the point. People in general are going to vote for the most important issue to them. Most people don't have 4 or 5 issues politically that they are looking to get solved. Most people are fairly apolitical. They have their own lives. They're not watching the news every day. They're not constantly reading articles and studying up and watching press conferences and all that shit. They have a circle of friends. They have their family. They talk about things from time to time. They have kind of like a outside looking in, whatever type of just like surface level understanding of what's going on in the country. And, the thing that matters most to them is generally going to be the thing that they think is going to affect them personally the most, which is totally understandable. So really surveying people based off their number one issue is probably the best way of figuring out what really matters, because most people aren't voting off of 5 or 6 issues. So if almost 30% of people in this country, if almost 1 in 3, more than 1 in 4 people in this country, as of March 2024, considered immigration, the border, to be the biggest issue. First of all, the border entails a lot of things. The border as a whole, that's what immigration really means. When people say immigration is their concern, they're not talking about legal immigration, with people coming here, getting their green cards, taking the citizenship test, staying their required, 6 months in the country until they get naturalized, all that shit, like the actual way it's supposed to happen. That's not what people mean when they say immigration is their issue. What they mean is the border. They mean the southern border. They're also not talking about the Canadian border. They mean the southern border. They mean people coming in from not only Latin America, but from like every third world country in the world, completely unvetted, accompanying thousands of tons of fentanyl and drugs flooding this country, leading to opioid overdose epidemics, the economy in general, just all that shit. Like the border thing is so much shit all at once. It's so much shit all at once. And that's what people care about. Like it or not, abortion is not the most important thing in the average person's life. If it is, you might want to re-examine your life, honestly. If abortion is the biggest thing to you, I get it. I'm not super pro-life, ultimate, no abortion under any circumstances. I'm just saying, look, at a certain point, unless you're like actively currently pregnant right now, if abortion is the number one thing on your plate and you're not currently seeking an abortion at this moment, you need to rethink your life choices. Under no circumstances should your ability to abort a pregnancy be the most important thing in your life. And spoiler alert, it's not. for 98% of people, despite what you would think. Despite the fact that there are nationwide protests on college campuses about the Israel-Palestine conflict, only 2% of people, as of 2 months ago, perhaps this might have slightly elevated since then because it's really kind of kicked off more so in the past couple weeks with the Columbia University. But even so, I would still venture to say that it's probably still sitting below 10%. It was at 2% 2 months ago. So you see news coverage, the police, the arrests, the pictures, the Instagram stories. Oh my God, everybody's so up in arms about this thing. 2% of people consider it the most important thing going on right now. That means only 2% of people are actually thinking about that when they go in to vote as their primary impetus to vote in one direction or the other. That is the facade that we are living in. Really, that's the facade. We are living under the illusion that all these things that we're being told matter to so many people. Climate change, 2% of people, 2% of people think that apparently the fact that the world is apparently going to end every 10 years, if we don't immediately convert to green energy for everything, like yesterday, 2% of people think that the apparent end of the world is the most important issue. What does that tell you? But these are all the things you're hearing about on a constant basis from the left. Women's healthcare rights, climate change, white supremacy. And so the Biden administration is going to go in there and form a coalition speaking to all of the apparently least important issues in the country and hoping that there's enough people that care about this thing that nobody cares about. But if you combine them with the people that care about this thing that nobody cares about, if you combine all these other things that people mildly care about, that's going to trump the immediate pressing thing that most people give a shit about. And it's not going to happen.